What would you say to the person tuning in right now, feeling overwhelmed? They have metabolic dysfunction, inflammation running rampant throughout the body. What step would be easiest and give them the biggest win to start generating momentum
Here's
get the M1s back to M2?
The most important message from me in all the things that we have talked about. You're wondering, what is it? Is it food? Is it exercise? Is it sleep? Is it socialization? What's the number one thing? And here's the number one message. The number one thing that you can do to set yourself up for brain health is to embrace the idea that you are the architect of your brain's destiny. That's job one. When you get that, then we layer on all the tools thereafter. That's the biggest stumbling block. Why? Because people have been messaged with the idea that we can just do whatever the heck we want, eat whatever we want, stay in that easy chair all day, watch TV, and then when we have a problem, there'll be a magic drug that's going to fix it. That's not reality. So the most important thing is to embrace the idea that you're guiding this ship.
Okay, what's step two?
Step two is to find out what's going to be that easiest first step for that particular individual. And that's sometimes not very easy to discern. But I think, generally, I think it's reasonable to look at diet and make some subtle changes and recognize that, what people want to eat isn't what they should eat. So we have to educate people away from responding to their desire to making knowledgeable food choices. I think food is hugely important. The other things are important as well, but I think food is really, it's the medicine here. Food is the medicine. Hippocrates is often quoted, "Let food be thy medicine." The reality is, these days we've learned that he may not have actually said that, but it's so important because, 60% of calories in American adults' diet is coming from ultra-processed foods. And that's a big issue. It's a very big issue. A study came out in January of 2025 in the Journal of Prevention of Alzheimer's. Think about that. The Journal of Prevention of Alzheimer's. What a world. But having said that, this is a study followed 1,375 people for an average of 12 years. The average age, I think, was 65. And these individuals were queried as to their consumption of ultra-processed foods. And we can define that later, perhaps. And it was found that for every single one serving per day of ultra-processed foods, risk of becoming demented was increased by 13%. For individuals consuming 10 or more servings, and that's not unusual, of ultra-processed foods per day, risk was increased about 2.7-fold, almost 3-fold increased risk for a disease for which there is no pharmaceutical fix. So those are sobering numbers, A. And B, it makes it very clear that diet is really related. And C, this becomes a powerful tool for me in terms of my outreach to make people really understand, or let them understand, that food choices matter a whole heck of a lot as it relates to the brain.
You mentioned defining ultra-processed foods. Let's do that, because there are healthy foods that are found in packages. And for people who are especially early on in the eating healthy journey, they may be confused.
So ultra-processed means the amount of modification. So how would you know that a food has been modified? Well, you mentioned packaging, but packaging isn't necessarily the tip-off. Look at the ingredient list. If there are more than 3 ingredients, most likely that food has been ultra-processed. It's been treated in such a way that it has added flavoring, added sweetener, which is more than 60% of foods in the grocery store have added sweetener. Emulsifiers, things to extend shelf life, things that make the food look more palatable, just a variety of ways that the foods can be modified. I understand that one of the so-called benefits of ultra-processing food is extension of shelf life. That's, I think, also related to profitability. But to be fair, what we're going for here are foods that have not been processed. The idea of food manufacturing, to me, is an oxymoron. Food isn't manufactured. Those two words should never be used together. So the trick is to shop the periphery of the grocery store, get foods that are not packaged. You can buy a bag of apples. Technically, that's packaged, but foods that don't require an ingredients list at all are foods that we should be consuming. We don't need ingredients if we're choosing to eat animal protein in our chicken or fish or beef, whatever it may be. Eggs, for example, no ingredients list necessary. You can go online and learn about how much protein an egg contains and how much choline it contains, why that's good for the brain, why fish is good for the brain. You can look up how much DHA salmon contains, really important. But when you see emulsifiers, flavor enhancers, sweeteners, color, etc., those are the foods that we've just got to turn our backs on. But yet, as mentioned, this is 60% of the average American daily consumption in terms of calories coming from this kind of food that is directly related to increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. I have that study at drperlmutter.com, the actual study from the American Journal of Prevention of Alzheimer's from January of 2025. People can read that or read the blog I wrote about it. This is so fundamentally important as it relates to prevention of the very disease for which there is no treatment.
Okay, so step one, ultra-processed foods, they're gone. For a lot of people, that will be a big step.
Yep.
If this is the beginning of the journey for them and is going to have a big impact on their health. What other foods or food categories do we want to be on the lookout for and make sure we're avoiding when it comes to the brain?
I will tell you, and we'll talk about other foods, but I will tell you that if we can reduce or even conceivably eliminate ultra-processed foods, we've done we will win the food battle. That's the heaviest lift, and I call it the low-hanging fruit. But I think the other thing to consider is that we want to be mindful of the types of oils that we consume. We want to consume natural, generally non-vegetable-based oils that have not been processed or modified to extend their shelf life. We open the door to things like extra virgin olive oil, part of the Mediterranean diet, avocado oil, certainly fish oil as consumed as a food or as a supplement. We get fish oil, of course, from eating food like fish, salmon especially. But I think processed oils, and even that said, being careful as to how we cook with those oils, that we're not overheating those oils past their smoke point and then damaging them. We don't want to consume those oils. We build the brain, which is 70% dry weight made of fat. Your brain is mostly fat. Excuse me. We build our brains based upon the fat that we consume. It doesn't come out of the air, and we're not constructing fat in our bodies. It's the fat we eat. And when you embrace that, you realize that, okay, I want to give my brain good fat so that I can build a better brain. The other food classification that I would say needs to be looked at are the processed meats. Processed meats generally help to raise uric acid, and uric acid being elevated is a threat to our metabolism. So you want to avoid processed meat, dried beef, bacon, sausage, those kinds of things, because they contain components oftentimes that are not good for us anyway, but they do also tend to raise uric acid. It's what I wrote about in the book Drop Acid, how important that is. And when uric acid levels are elevated, that sets the stage for diabetes and metabolic dysfunction. And, we've covered that. We know where that road leads.
While we're on uric acid, we know the processed meats, they're a no-no. What other things do we want to be aware of that are going to elevate that?
Alcohol. Who knew? I mean, one of the biggest issues that is related to elevated uric acid is particularly alcohol, and particularly beer. Beer is high in something called purines because of the yeast that goes into making beer. Yeast, when it's broken down, liberates purines, which are really the breakdown products of the DNA and the RNA that are found within cells. That's what yeast is. It's cellular. So purines tend to increase uric acid quite dramatically. So these are the big things. I think perhaps though the largest issue that elevates uric acid is something called fructose. Fructose is a sugar. Yes, the name comes from fructose, fruit sugar. It's a type of sugar found in fruit, and having a piece of fruit is not a significant source of fructose, but drinking a glass of orange juice or drinking a Coke is. Matter of fact, ounce for ounce, orange juice, apple juice, and Coke have about the same amount of sugar. So fructose is directly metabolized into uric acid in the human body. And as mentioned, 60% of processed foods in America have added sweetener. By and large, that's fructose or a derivative of fructose coming from what we call high fructose corn syrup. It's very sweet, it's very cheap, and it is supported by the USDA in terms of agriculture. So there's a lot of fructose in the world out there for us to consume that will raise our uric acid, tell the body winter is coming, increase our body fat, downregulate our mitochondrial function, and make us more insulin resistant.
Okay, let's come at this now from the other way. We've talked about the microbiome. We want to support that. But somebody trying to put together a diet to support brain health, how do they begin?
Through the lens of the microbiome?
No, I just mentioned we've gone there already in the importance. So that's going to be a piece of this.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about now negative foods when it comes to brain health. Let's talk about it from the other aspect now, building that plate to support the brain.
Great. What I wrote about in Brain Defenders were the guidelines for the diet that is going to be best for you as an individual. And these days there are various names of diets. There's paleo, there's mind diet, there's Mediterranean diet, Green Plus Mediterranean. There are a variety of diets that are out there that have various types of names. Some of them are acronyms, some of them define where the diet came from. And I decided I was going to go a different way and said, here's what I want your diet to do. I want it to keep your blood sugar under control. I want it to supply adequate amounts of fiber to nurture your microbiome. I want it to have a lot of color, in other words, be mostly plant-based, unless you're a vegetarian, in which case it is, by definition, all plant-based. And that it is a diet that supplies adequate amounts of protein, I define that in the book, as well as adequate amounts of good oil or good fat. Now, what you choose to do is really up to you, but I think it's do the diet, watch your blood sugars, and make sure it's under control. And call it what you will. I mean, we could call it Jesse's diet if you want. Call it whatever you like. But this, I think, tends to make it easier for people, because I think people's heads are spinning when they're trying to specifically conform to a diet. They get the app and they enter in every bit of their food. And I know that's challenging. And the problem with it being challenging is that people don't remain on those specific diets after a relatively short period of time. But if we can broad stroke this, I think that's the key to success.
You made it to the end of this clip, which means you're going to love the full episode. Head on over here to watch, and I'll see you over there.
These are the cells called the microglial cells that are taking the front of the stage now, because when they go south, it sets the stage for every type of brain degenerative condition that you could think of. When our blood sugars elevate.